The woods were full of bodies. That's what I remember most about Belleau Wood. Not the machine guns, not the gas, not the charges across open wheat fields. I remember the bodies. Hundreds of them, scattered through those trees like fallen leaves. Marines and Germans all mixed together, rotting in the June heat. You couldn't walk 10 feet without stepping over a dead man. They called us devil dogs after that battle. Said the Germans were terrified of us, called us Teufelhunden, made us sound like heroes, like we were something special. We weren't special. We were just boys who refused to die easy. My name is Jack Sullivan. I'm 63 years old, and I was a Marine at Belleau Wood in June 1918. I was 20 years old then, fresh off the farm in Iowa. Thought I was going to France to save the world. Thought the Great War was going to be my great adventure. I didn't know anything. None of us did. I joined the Marines in January 1918. Germany was winning. The Russians had collapsed, signed a peace treaty, and now the Germans were moving all their troops from the Eastern Front to France. One last big push to win the war before American troops could make a difference. They needed men, needed them fast. So they took boys like me, farm boys and factory workers and college students, and turned us into Marines in 3 months. Basic training at Paris Island, then advanced infantry training, then onto transport ships to France. We landed at Saint-Nazaire in April. The French didn't know what to make of us. We were so young, so green, so eager. They'd been fighting for 4 years by then, lost millions of men. They looked at us like we were children playing dress-up in uniforms. Maybe we were. The 2nd Division, that was us. Mix of Army and Marine units. I was in the 5th Marine Regiment, 1st Battalion, Company A. We trained behind the lines for a few weeks, learning French tactics, getting used to the sound of artillery in the distance. My squad leader was Sergeant Mike O'Donnell. Boston Irish, built like a brick wall, had been in the Corps for 8 years. He'd fought in the Philippines, fought in Nicaragua. He was a real Marine. The rest of us were just kids pretending. Listen up, he told us one day during training. When we get into it, and we will get into it, you do exactly what I say, when I say it. You don't think, you don't hesitate, you just do. That's how you stay alive. That's how we all stay alive. We nodded like we understood. We didn't understand anything. My best friend was Tommy Chen from San Francisco. His parents had emigrated from China, and he'd grown up working in his father's restaurant. He was the smallest guy in the squad, but he never backed down from anything. We'd bunked next to each other since Paris Island. You scared, Jack? He asked me one night. Nah, I lied. You? Terrified, he said, grinning. But don't tell O'Donnell. There was also Frank Morrison from Georgia, who could field strip a rifle faster than anyone I'd ever seen. And David Klein from New York, who'd been studying to be a lawyer before he enlisted. And Bobby Wallace from Texas, who never shut up about how things were bigger and better back home. Good men, good Marines. We were a squad, a family. We looked out for each other. In late May, we moved up toward the front. The Germans had broken through French lines at Chateau Thierry, were pushing toward Paris. The French were in full retreat, roads clogged with refugees, with wounded soldiers, with defeated men. We were marching against the tide. While everyone else was running away from the Germans, we were marching toward them. A French officer saw us coming up the road. He shouted at us in broken English, "Fall back! The Germans come! Fall back!" Captain Lloyd Williams, our company commander, just looked at him. Retreat? Hell, we just got here. The French officer stared at him like he was crazy. Maybe he was. Maybe we all were. We set up positions along a line from Belleau Wood to the village of Bourèche. The wheat fields in front of us were beautiful, golden grain waving in the June breeze. Behind us was a stream called Lucy-le-Bocage. Behind that, the road to Paris. This was it. The line we had to hold. If the Germans broke through here, nothing would stop them from reaching Paris. The war would be over. Germany would win. We're not letting them through, Sergeant O'Donnell said. Whatever it takes, we're not letting them through. On June 1st, we dug in. Foxholes, firing positions, machine gun nests. Made ourselves as ready as we could. The Germans were in Belleau Wood, about half a mile away through those wheat fields. We could see the woods from our positions. Could see the dark tree line where they were waiting. It looked peaceful, quiet. Just trees and wheat and a nice June day in the French countryside. We had no idea what was waiting for us in those woods. No idea what the next month would cost us. No idea that Belleau Wood would become the bloodiest battle the Marines had ever fought. On the night of June 5th, we got the order. Attack at dawn. Clear the Germans out of Belleau Wood. Take the woods and hold them. I cleaned my rifle that night, checked my ammunition, wrote a letter to my parents, though I didn't mail it. Didn't want them to get a letter right before they got a telegram saying I was dead. Tommy sat next to me, sharpening his bayonet. Neither of us talked. What was there to say? Dawn came on June 6th, 1918. A beautiful morning, clear sky, birds singing. The wheat fields looked like gold in the rising sun. Then the whistle blew and we went over the top. That's when I learned what war really was. We advanced across those wheat fields in waves, company by company, platoon by platoon, walking, not running, keep the line straight, keep together. That's what they'd trained us to do. The wheat was chest high. Beautiful golden wheat, ripe for harvest. We waded through it like we were walking through water. Could barely see the men to your left or right, just the tops of their heads and their rifles. For the first 100 yards, it was quiet. Just the sound of boots crushing wheat, equipment rattling, men breathing hard. I remember thinking, maybe they're not here. Maybe the Germans pulled back. Maybe this will be easy. Then the machine guns opened up. I'd never heard anything like it. Not one gun, but dozens of them, all firing at once. The sound was continuous, like ripping cloth, but 1,000 times louder. The wheat in front of us just disappeared. Cut down by bullets like an invisible scythe was sweeping through it. Men started dropping, not falling dramatically like in the movies, just dropping. 1 second they were there, the next they were down in the wheat. Some were silent, others were screaming. "Keep moving," Sergeant O'Donnell shouted. "Don't bunch up. Keep moving." We moved, because that's what you do. You don't think about the men falling around you. You don't think about the bullets snapping past your head. You just put one foot in front of the other and keep moving. The German machine guns were dug in along the tree line. Concrete emplacements, perfectly positioned to cover the wheat fields. They'd had weeks to prepare, weeks to set up their killing ground. And we were walking right into it. I saw Bobby Wallace go down, just ahead of me, maybe 10 feet. He grabbed his leg and fell. I started toward him, but O'Donnell grabbed my shoulder. "Leave him. Keep moving." "But he's hit." "And you'll be hit too if you stop. The corpsman will get him. Move." I moved. Left Bobby lying there in the wheat, screaming. Found out later a bullet had shattered his femur. He survived, but lost the leg. We made it to a small rise about 200 yards from the tree line. What was left of us, anyway? Maybe half the company. The rest were dead or wounded in the wheat behind us. We dove into shell holes, behind rocks, anything that would give us cover. The machine gun fire was relentless, bullets kicking up dirt all around us. You could hear them cracking overhead, that distinctive snap when they passed close. Tommy was next to me in a shell hole. His face was white, his hands shaking. "Jesus Christ," he said. "Jesus Christ, Jack." "I know," I said, though I didn't know anything. Couldn't process what had just happened. Couldn't believe half our company was gone in 5 minutes. David Klein was in the shell hole with us. He was hit, bullet through his shoulder. He was trying to bandage it himself, his hands slick with blood. How bad? I asked. Bad enough, he said through gritted teeth. But I can still shoot. Our artillery started up behind us, shells screaming overhead, impacting in the woods. The Germans responded with their own artillery, shells landing in the wheat fields, in our positions, everywhere. The ground shook with each impact, dirt and shrapnel flying. This was supposed to be our artillery preparation, supposed to knock out those machine gun nests before we assaulted the woods. But the Germans were dug in too well, concrete and earth and logs. The shells weren't reaching them. We stayed in those shell holes for hours, pinned down, unable to advance, unable to retreat, just lying there while machine gun bullets snapped overhead and artillery shells exploded around us. Men were dying. Wounded were screaming for corpsmen, and there was nothing we could do but press ourselves into the dirt and pray. Frank Morrison tried to get to a wounded man about 20 yards away. The machine guns got him before he made it 10 feet, caught him in the chest. He fell face first into the wheat and didn't move. God damn it, Tommy screamed. God damn it. Sergeant O'Donnell crawled over to our shell hole. His uniform was torn, blood on his face from shrapnel, but he was alive. We're pulling back, he said. Pass the word. When I give the signal, we fall back to the tree line behind us. Stay low. Move fast. What about the wounded? I asked. Corpsmen will get them when it's dark. Right now, we need to get out of this killing zone. We waited until dusk. Waited until the light was fading and the German gunners couldn't see as well. Then O'Donnell gave the signal and we ran. Ran back through those wheat fields, ran past dead Marines, ran past wounded men crying for help, ran while the machine guns chased us, bullets snapping past, men falling even in retreat. I don't remember much about that run. Just pure terror and adrenaline. My lungs burning, my legs pumping, the weight of my rifle and pack pulling me down. Tommy beside me, both of us running for our lives. We made it back to our starting positions, what was left of us. Company A had started the day with about 200 men. Maybe 80 of us made it back. The rest were dead or wounded in those wheat fields. That was day one. Day one of Belleau Wood. We thought it was over. Thought we'd tried, failed, and now they'd pull us out. Bring in fresh troops. Let us rest. We were wrong. That night, while we sat in our foxholes trying to stop shaking, trying to process what had just happened, the officers were planning the next assault. Tomorrow, they said. We'd attack again tomorrow. Tommy looked at me. They're sending us back in there. Looks like it. We can't. Jack, we can't do that again. But we could. We did. Because that's what Marines do. They told us to attack, and we attacked. The next morning, June 7th, we went over the top again. Different approach this time, hitting the southern edge of the woods instead of coming straight across the fields. Thought it might be easier. It wasn't easier. The Germans were waiting for us there, too. More machine guns, more death. We fought all day for a few hundred yards of woods. Hand-to-hand combat in the trees. Rifle fire at point-blank range. Grenades, bayonets. David Klein died that day. Shot through the head while we were clearing a machine gun nest. Didn't even have time to scream. Just dropped. Tommy killed the German who shot him. Emptied his rifle into the machine gun position. Then sat down next to David's body and cried. We took the southern section of the woods by nightfall. Held it against 3 German counterattacks. Lost more men. More names for the casualty lists. And Belleau Wood still wasn't ours. The Germans still held most of it. We'd bought a few hundred yards of blood-soaked ground, and it had cost us half the regiment. This wasn't war the way they'd told us about it. This wasn't glory or honor or noble sacrifice. This was butchery. This was feeding men into a meat grinder and watching them come out the other side in pieces. But we weren't done. Weren't even close to done. Belleau Wood would take 26 more days. 26 days of fighting and dying in those woods. 26 days of hell that would make the first 2 days look like a warm-up. And every day, I wondered if it would be the day I joined the bodies lying in the trees. The woods were different from the wheat fields, worse in ways I couldn't have imagined. In the wheat fields, at least you could see the sky. In the woods, the trees blocked out the sun, made everything dark and close and suffocating. The underbrush was thick. You couldn't see more than a few yards in any direction. Germans could be anywhere, usually were. And the bodies, God, the bodies. They were everywhere. Marines from the first assaults, Germans from the counterattacks. Some were fresh, just hours dead. Others had been there for days, bloating in the June heat. The smell was overpowering, sweet and rotten and nauseating. You couldn't bury them. No time, no way to dig graves in ground that was fought over every day. So they just lay there, and we fought around them, stepped over them, used them for cover sometimes. They stopped being people and became just obstacles, part of the terrain. I remember one German soldier couldn't have been older than me. He was propped against a tree, eyes open, staring at nothing. He'd been there for days. His skin was gray, his face sunken. Flies covered him. We passed him so many times he became a landmark. Turn left at the dead German, we'd say. That's what Belleau Wood did to you. Made death so common it became normal. The fighting was constant. Not big assaults like that first day, but continuous small battles. You'd clear a section of woods, dig in, then the Germans would counterattack, drive you back. Then you'd attack again, back and forth over the same ground again and again. Machine guns hidden in the trees, snipers in the branches, artillery falling without warning. You never felt safe, never could relax. Every tree could have a German behind it. Every bush could hide a machine gun nest. We fought at night, too. That was the worst. Pitch black in those woods. Couldn't see your hand in front of your face. You'd hear movement, fire at shadows, hope it was Germans and not your own men. Half the time you didn't know. Tommy and I stuck together, watched each other's backs. That's how you survived. Stayed with your buddy, never let him out of your sight. Marines died alone. Marines survived in pairs. On June 10th, we were clearing a section of woods near the northern edge. Sergeant O'Donnell was leading us. About 20 men left from what had been a full platoon. We were moving tree to tree, checking every foxhole, every fallen log. We found a German machine gun nest. Concrete bunker, carefully camouflaged. They waited until we were close, maybe 20 feet, then opened up. O'Donnell took the first burst, caught him across the chest. He was dead before he hit the ground. The rest of us scattered, diving behind trees. The machine gun was traversing, looking for targets. Men were screaming. Someone threw a grenade, but it bounced off the bunker's roof and exploded harmlessly. Tommy looked at me. We were both behind the same tree, bullets chewing up the bark inches from our heads. We have to flank it, he said. We'll die trying. We'll die anyway if we stay here. He was right. The machine gun had us pinned. Eventually they'd get lucky, or their friends would show up, and we'd all be dead. On 3, Tommy said. You go left, I'll go right. Get around the sides. I nodded. Couldn't believe I was nodding. Couldn't believe I was about to do this. 1, 2, 3. We moved. I went left, running low, using trees for cover. Bullets followed me. I could hear them hitting the trees, could hear that horrible crack when they passed close to my head. But I kept moving. Got to the side of the bunker. Could see the gun barrel sticking out. Could hear the Germans inside shouting to each other. I pulled a grenade from my belt, yanked the pin, counted to 2, threw it through the firing slit. The explosion was muffled by the concrete, but it worked. The machine gun stopped firing. Tommy came around the other side. We looked at each other, both of us breathing hard, both of us shaking. We'd done it. We'd survived. Then we heard moaning from inside the bunker. Someone was still alive in there. We cleared the entrance, just a low opening in the back. Tommy went in first, rifle ready. I followed. There were 4 Germans inside. 3 were dead, torn apart by the grenade. The 4th was alive, but not for long. Young kid, maybe 17. The grenade had caught him in the stomach. His intestines were hanging out. He was trying to push them back in, crying and moaning. He looked up at us, said something in German, probably begging for help, probably asking us to save him. There was nothing we could do. Even a field hospital couldn't have saved him. We didn't have morphine, had used it all days ago. All we could do was watch him die. Tommy raised his rifle, put the barrel to the kid's head. The kid closed his eyes, stopped moaning, just waited. Tommy pulled the trigger. We didn't talk about it. Didn't talk about the fact that Tommy had just executed a wounded enemy soldier. Didn't talk about the fact that it had been the merciful thing to do. Didn't talk about anything. Just moved on to the next objective. That's what Belleau Wood did to you. Made you into something that could kill a wounded teenager without hesitation. Made you into something that saw mercy in a bullet to the head. The gas came on June 13th. Not the killing kind, just tear gas, meant to flush us out of our positions. But in those dense woods, it settled in the low areas. Couldn't escape it. We put on our gas masks, but they were old, poorly maintained. They leaked. Our eyes burned. Our lungs burned. We coughed until we vomited, then kept fighting anyway. I saw a Marine pull off his gas mask because he couldn't breathe. The gas got him in seconds. He fell to his knees, clawing at his throat, his face turning purple. Took him 5 minutes to die. 5 minutes of suffocation. We couldn't help him. Had to keep our own masks on. Had to keep fighting. By mid-June, half the regiment was gone. Dead, wounded, or so broken they couldn't fight anymore. They brought up replacements, fresh Marines who hadn't seen combat yet. You could tell them apart immediately. They were clean. Their uniforms weren't torn and stained. Their eyes weren't dead yet. They died just as fast as the rest of us. One replacement, kid named Jimmy Peterson, arrived on June 15th, assigned to our squad to replace Frank Morrison. He was excited, eager, full of questions, wanted to know what combat was like, wanted to know if we'd seen Germans up close. Tommy looked at him. You'll see them up close real soon. Then you'll wish you hadn't. Jimmy lasted 2 days. Machine gun caught him on June 17th. Shot through the throat. He died choking on his own blood while we fought around him. We took his ammunition and kept moving. We stopped learning the names of replacements after that. What was the point? They'd be dead in a day or two anyway. The woods broke everyone eventually. Men who'd been fine at first started cracking. Shell shock, they called it. Men would freeze up in combat, couldn't move, couldn't fight. Just stood there shaking until someone dragged them to the rear. Some would start crying and couldn't stop. Some would just wander off, walking toward the German lines like they wanted to die. I felt it starting in myself, the disconnect, the numbness, like I was watching myself from outside my body, watching myself kill, watching myself step over bodies, watching myself become something less than human. Tommy felt it too. We'd stopped talking about anything but the immediate present. Where's the next objective? Where's the enemy? Where's the ammunition? We didn't talk about home, didn't talk about the future. There was no future. There was only Belleau Wood. On June 21st, we took the northern section of the woods. Cost us another 100 Marines, but we took it, held it against 2 counterattacks. On June 23rd, we finally cleared the last German position. The woods were ours. After 18 days of fighting, after thousands of casualties, Belleau Wood belonged to the Marines. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like surviving a nightmare that had gone on too long. We sat in those woods, surrounded by bodies, German and American both, and felt nothing. No relief, no joy, just exhaustion and numbness. Tommy was sitting next to me, his rifle across his lap. His hands were shaking. They'd been shaking for days. Shell shock, probably. But we didn't talk about it. We did it, I said. We took the woods. Yeah, he said. His voice was flat. Dead. We took the woods. We looked around at what we'd taken. Shattered trees, churned earth, bodies rotting in the June heat. This was what we'd fought for. This was what 2,000 Marines had died for. A piece of forest that would never grow anything again but ghosts. They pulled us out of Belleau Wood on June 26th, marched us back behind the lines to rest and refit. The 5th Marine Regiment had started with about 3,000 men. We came out with less than 1,500, over half gone in 3 weeks. Company A had it worse. We'd started with 200 men. 37 of us walked out, 37. The rest were dead, wounded, or missing. I was one of the 37. Tommy was another. Out of our original squad of 8, we were the only 2 left. O'Donnell, Frank, David, Bobby, and the others, all gone. They gave us a week behind the lines. Hot food, clean clothes, a chance to sleep in actual beds instead of muddy foxholes. Should have been heaven. Should have felt like a gift. It felt like nothing. I couldn't sleep in the bed. Too soft, too quiet. I'd lie there for an hour, then give up and sleep on the floor. Even then, I'd wake up every hour or two, reaching for my rifle, thinking I heard Germans in the dark. Tommy was the same. He couldn't eat the hot food. His stomach rejected it. He'd lost so much weight, his uniform hung on him like a scarecrow. His hands never stopped shaking. Never. We tried to write letters home, sat there with paper and pen, trying to think of what to say, trying to explain what had happened to us, what we'd done, what we'd seen. I wrote 3 words. I am alive. Then I stared at the paper for an hour. Couldn't think of anything else to say. Couldn't explain Belleau Wood to my parents back in Iowa. Couldn't make them understand. So I crumpled up the paper and threw it away. Didn't write home for another 2 months. The worst part was the replacements arriving. Fresh Marines, straight from the States. They looked at us like we were heroes, like we were something special because we'd survived Belleau Wood. They didn't understand. We weren't heroes. We were just the ones who hadn't died yet. We'd killed. We'd watched friends die. We'd done things that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. There was nothing heroic about any of it. One replacement, eager kid with bright eyes, asked me what it was like, what combat was like, what Belleau Wood was like. I looked at him. It's like hell, but worse, because you can't die and escape it. His smile faded. He didn't ask any more questions. They gave us medals, told us the French government was awarding the 5th Marines the Croix de Guerre, told us we'd stopped the German advance, told us we'd saved Paris, told us we were heroes. We stood there in formation while some French general pinned medals on our chests and made a speech about honor and courage and sacrifice. The whole time, all I could think about was the bodies in the woods, the smell, the screaming. Tommy shooting that wounded German kid. This wasn't honor. This wasn't courage. This was surviving while better men died. After the ceremony, Tommy took off his medal and threw it in a ditch. Don't want it, he said. Don't want to remember. But we did remember. We remembered every single day. They sent us back to the line in July. Different sector, quieter front. Just holding positions, occasional patrols. Nothing like Belleau wood. We should have been relieved, but we couldn't shake it. Couldn't shake the feeling that every tree hid a German, that every moment of quiet was just the calm before the machine guns opened up. We were jumpy, paranoid, seeing threats everywhere. On a patrol in late July, we heard movement in the bushes. Tommy opened fire immediately, emptied his whole magazine. We all hit the deck expecting a firefight. It was a deer, just a deer, wandering through the woods. Tommy had killed it. He stared at the dead deer. Then he sat down and put his head in his hands. He didn't cry, didn't say anything, just sat there. I sat down next to him. "It's okay. It was just a mistake. I can't stop," he said quietly. "I can't stop seeing them. Can't stop hearing the machine guns. Can't stop being in those woods." "I know," I said, "because I couldn't stop either. None of us could." The war ended on November 11th, 1918. Armistice. We'd won. Germany surrendered. The fighting was over. We were in Belgium when we got the news. Someone started cheering. Then others joined in. Soon the whole regiment was celebrating. Men were crying, hugging each other, firing their rifles in the air. Tommy and I just stood there, watching them celebrate, feeling nothing. "It's over," Tommy said. "Yeah," I said. "We made it." "Yeah. We should have been happy, should have been relieved, should have felt something. But all we felt was empty, hollow, like the part of us that could feel joy had died in Belleau wood and never came back. We stayed in Europe for another 6 months, occupation duty in Germany. Then finally, in May 1919, we shipped home. The whole way across the Atlantic, Tommy stood at the rail staring at the water. He'd stand there for hours, not moving, not talking, just staring. "You okay?" I asked him one day. "No," he said. "I don't think I'll ever be okay again." We landed in New York. There were parades, celebrations, people cheering for the returning heroes, pretty girls throwing flowers, bands playing. Everyone was so happy the war was over. We marched through the streets in formation. People were shouting, waving flags, crying with joy. They called us heroes, called us the men who saved the world. All I could see was the woods. All I could smell was the bodies. All I could hear was the machine guns. Tommy was next to me in formation. He was crying, tears running down his face while we marched. Nobody else could see. He was in the middle of the formation, but I could see. "Tommy," I said quietly. "They don't know," he said. "They don't know what we did, what it cost. They think it was glorious." "I know. They're thanking us. They're thanking us for..." He couldn't finish. I understood. They were thanking us for killing, for surviving, for doing things that had destroyed us inside. They thought we were heroes. They didn't know we were broken. They mustered us out in June 1919, gave us our discharge papers, our final pay, and sent us home, just like that. One day you're a Marine, the next you're a civilian. Go home, get a job, live a normal life, like we could ever be normal again. I went back to Iowa. My parents were waiting at the train station. My mother cried when she saw me. My father shook my hand, said he was proud. They threw a welcome home party. The whole town came. Everyone wanted to hear stories about the war, about France, about the battles, about Belleau wood. I couldn't tell them, couldn't explain. So I made up stories, clean stories, stories about camaraderie and bravery and victory, stories that made them smile and feel proud. I never told them the truth, never told them about the bodies or the smell or the things I'd done. Never told them about Tommy shooting the wounded German. Never told them about the deer he killed because he couldn't stop being in the war. Never told them that their son had died in Belleau Wood and a stranger had come home in his place. Tommy went back to San Francisco. I got one letter from him a few weeks after we'd separated. Short letter. Said he was trying to find work. Said he was having trouble sleeping. Said he missed the guys from the squad. That was the last I heard from him. In August 1919, I got a telegram from his father. Tommy had hung himself in his bedroom, left a note that just said, "I couldn't get out of the woods." I understood exactly what he meant. He'd survived Belleau Wood. His body had made it out, but his mind never left. He was still there, still in those trees, still surrounded by bodies and machine gun fire. And part of me was still there, too, still is, 42 years later, still in Belleau Wood, still in the woods, still surrounded by ghosts. After Tommy died, something broke in me that had been barely holding together. I'd been managing. That's what I told myself. Managing to work on my father's farm. Managing to eat and sleep and pretend to be normal. Managing to hide the nightmares and the shaking and the times I'd hit the ground when I heard a car backfire. But Tommy's death destroyed that. He'd been my last connection to the truth. The only person who understood what we'd been through. The only person I could have talked to about it, even though we never did. Now he was gone, and I was alone with all of it. I started drinking. Started that same week I got the telegram about Tommy. Just a little at first. Whiskey at night to help me sleep. But a little became more. More became too much. Within a month, I was drinking every day. By winter, I was drunk more often than I was sober. My parents didn't understand. They thought I was just having trouble adjusting. They'd heard about veterans having problems, but they thought time would fix it. Thought I just needed to settle down, find a nice girl, start a family. They didn't understand that time doesn't fix everything. Some things are broken too badly to heal. I couldn't hold a job. Tried working at the feed store in town. Made it 2 weeks before I had a breakdown. A truck backfired outside, and I dove under the counter, covered my head, started shaking uncontrollably. The owner found me there 20 minutes later, still curled up, still shaking. He let me go the next day. Said he understood, said he was sorry, but he couldn't have someone like me working there. Said it made customers uncomfortable. I tried other jobs. Farm work, factory work, anything. Couldn't hold any of them. The loud noises, the crowds, the feeling of being trapped indoors, everything set me off. I'd have panic attacks, flashbacks, episodes where I couldn't breathe. The nightmares got worse. Every night I was back in Belleau Wood. Sometimes I was attacking across the wheat fields, watching men fall around me. Sometimes I was in the woods, hunting Germans. Sometimes I was finding bodies, stepping over corpses, breathing that sweet, rotten smell. The worst dream was the one about Tommy and the wounded German kid. I'd be standing there watching Tommy put the gun to the kid's head. But in the dream, when Tommy pulled the trigger, it was the German kid's face. Then it would be David Klein's face. Then Frank Morrison's. Then O'Donnell's. Then Tommy's. All of them, one after another. Tommy executing them all while I stood and watched. I'd wake up screaming. My parents would come running, find me sitting up in bed, covered in sweat, crying. They stopped coming after a while, stopped trying to comfort me. What could they say? I started having violent episodes, times when I wasn't fully present, when I thought I was still in France. I'd wake up with my hands around my father's throat once. Thought he was a German coming into my foxhole. Terrified him, terrified me. My mother started crying whenever she looked at me. Her son had gone to war and never come back. What returned was something else, something broken and dangerous and haunted. By 1921, I was living in a shack on the edge of my father's property. They couldn't have me in the house anymore. too unpredictable, too violent, too broken. So I lived alone in a one-room shack with my memories and my whiskey. I thought about killing myself constantly, every single day. Sometimes it was all I thought about. How easy it would be, how peaceful, how it would finally let me escape Belleau Wood. I had a rifle. Same rifle I'd carried in France. They let me keep it when I mustered out. I'd sit there with it, loading it, unloading it, putting the barrel in my mouth sometimes, testing, seeing how it felt, wondering if today would be the day. What stopped me was anger, stupid, pointless anger. I'd think about Tommy, about how he'd given up, how he'd let the war win, and I'd get angry at him for quitting, angry at myself for wanting to quit too. That anger kept me alive, though I'm not sure it was worth it. The American Legion tried to recruit me. Veterans organization, they said. Place for men like us to gather, help each other, find camaraderie. I went to one meeting, sat in the back while veterans talked about their service, told war stories, laughed about close calls, reminisced about the good times. I left before the meeting was over. Couldn't stand it. They were turning it into nostalgia, into something soft and comfortable. They were forgetting what it really was, or maybe they'd never seen what I'd seen. Maybe they'd been in the rear echelons, or quiet sectors, or came in at the end. Maybe I was the broken one. Maybe everyone else could move on except me. The veterans from town tried to include me in their activities. Memorial Day parades, 4th of July celebrations. They'd ask me to march with them, wear my uniform, carry the flag. I couldn't do it. Couldn't put on that uniform and pretend it stood for something good. Couldn't march in parades while children cheered for the man who'd killed teenagers in a forest. Couldn't celebrate the war that had destroyed me. They stopped asking after a while, stopped including me. I became known as the crazy veteran, the drunk who lived in a shack, the one you didn't talk to, the one you crossed the street to avoid. Fine by me. I didn't want to talk to them either. My breaking point came in 1923, 5 years after Belleau Wood. I'd been drinking all day, drinking all night. Ran out of whiskey around midnight. Needed more. Needed something to quiet the screaming in my head. I walked into town, 3 miles in the dark. Found the local bootlegger. Prohibition was on, but everyone knew where to get liquor. Pounded on his door at 2 a.m. He opened the door, saw me standing there, wild-eyed and desperate, and he knew what I wanted. He was a veteran, too. Different war, Spanish-American. He understood. "Jack," he said quietly, "you need to stop. This is killing you." "I know," I said. "That's the point." "That's not the answer." "What is the answer?" I screamed at him. "Tell me, what's the answer when you can't sleep without seeing your friends die? When you can't hear a loud noise without hitting the ground? When you can't look at yourself in the mirror without seeing a killer?" He didn't have an answer. Nobody did. I collapsed on his porch. Just broke down completely, crying, screaming, pounding my fists on the wooden boards until they bled. He sat down next to me. Didn't try to stop me. Just sat there while I fell apart. When I finally stopped, when there was nothing left, he said, "There's a hospital in New York for veterans like us, like you. They might be able to help." "Nothing can help." "Maybe not. But staying here, drinking yourself to death, that's not living. That's just dying slowly." He was right. I knew he was right. My father drove me to New York the next week, took me to the Veterans Hospital. They had a whole ward for men with what they called shell shock, men who couldn't readjust, men who were trapped in their wars. I spent 6 months there. They tried different treatments, talk therapy, occupational therapy, rest, routine. It didn't fix me. Nothing could fix me. But it gave me tools to cope. Gave me ways to manage the nightmares, the flashbacks, the panic. Most importantly, it gave me other men who understood. Men who'd been in the trenches, who'd seen the same things, who carried the same ghosts. We didn't have to explain. We didn't have to pretend. We could just exist together in our brokenness. When I left in 1924, I wasn't cured, wasn't healed, but I was functional. I could sleep a few hours a night, could work part-time, could go a day or two without drinking, could think about living instead of just surviving. It was something. It was more than I'd had before. But Belleau Wood was still there, still in my head, still waiting in the dark. It would always be there. I understood that now. This wasn't something you got over. This wasn't something that healed with time. This was something you carried every day for the rest of your life. And if you were lucky, if you were strong enough, you learned to carry it without letting it crush you. Most days I wasn't strong enough, but some days I was. And those days I had to believe were worth staying alive for. I'm 63 years old now, 42 years since Belleau Wood, almost a lifetime. I've outlived most of the men I fought with. Outlived Tommy by 41 years. Outlived O'Donnell and Frank and David and all the others by 4 decades. Sometimes I wonder if I should have, if surviving was worth it. I got married in 1928, met a woman named Helen who worked at the library in town. She knew about the war, knew about the hospital, knew what I was, but she married me anyway. We had a quiet life. No children. I couldn't risk passing this on. Couldn't risk having a son who might go to war. Helen understood. She understood a lot of things without me having to explain them. She learned my triggers, learned not to wake me suddenly, learned that Independence Day and Memorial Day were hard days, days when I'd disappear into myself, learned that sometimes I needed to be alone with my ghosts. She never asked for details about Belleau Wood, never pushed, just accepted that there was a part of me she couldn't reach, a part that would always be in those woods. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I held her hand at the end and she said, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." "You did save me," I told her. "Every day. You saved me every day." It was true. Without Helen, I wouldn't have made it. Would have ended up like Tommy, or drunk in a gutter somewhere, or dead a dozen different ways. The nightmares never stopped. 42 years, and I still dream about Belleau Wood at least once a week. Sometimes more. The wheat fields, the machine guns, the bodies in the trees, Tommy shooting that German kid. All of it still fresh, still vivid. I still can't handle loud noises, fireworks, backfiring cars, thunder. They all send me back. My heart starts racing. My hands shake. I have to find somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, until it passes. I still see the faces. Every man who died in Belleau Wood, I remember their faces. O'Donnell, Frank Morrison, David Klein, the replacements whose names I never learned, the German kid with his guts hanging out, all of them burned into my memory. The Second World War came in 1941. When they attacked Pearl Harbor, when America entered the war again, people expected me to be proud, thought I'd want to enlist, go back and serve again. I couldn't even listen to the news, couldn't hear about the fighting without having flashbacks, couldn't watch the newsreels at the theater without leaving in the middle, shaking. Young men from town enlisted, marched off to war with the same eagerness I'd had in 1918. Their parents were proud. The town threw parades. Everyone talked about duty and honor and defending freedom. I wanted to grab every one of those boys and tell them the truth. Tell them what war really was. Tell them about Belleau Wood and the bodies and the smell and the nightmares that would never stop. Tell them not to go. Tell them to run. But I didn't, because they wouldn't have listened. just like I wouldn't have listened in 1918. You can't explain war to someone who hasn't lived it. The words don't exist. Some of those boys came back broken like me. I'd see them around town, and I'd recognize it. The 1,000-yard stare, the jumpiness, the way they couldn't quite connect with the world around them. We'd nod at each other sometimes, a recognition between ghosts. Most people don't understand. They think war is what you see in movies, heroes and villains, clear good and evil, noble sacrifice. They don't understand the reality, the confusion, the terror, the things you do just to survive, the way it changes you into something you don't recognize. Korea came in 1950. More young men marching off, more parades, more people talking about honor and duty, more boys who would come back broken if they came back at all. I stopped going into town on military holidays. Couldn't stand the celebrations. Couldn't stand watching people wave flags and make speeches about glory while I knew, really knew, what they were celebrating. War isn't glorious. War is young men dying in mud and filth. War is watching your friends get torn apart. War is doing things that destroy your soul. War is carrying ghosts for the rest of your life. But nobody wants to hear that. They want the clean story, the heroic story, the story that makes sense. Belleau Wood doesn't make sense. Never did. We took those woods at a cost of over 2,000 Marine casualties. 2,000 men dead or wounded for a piece of forest that had no strategic value once we took it. We held it for a few weeks, then moved on, left it behind. All those men, all that death, for nothing permanent, for nothing that lasted. The Marine Corps made it into legend, made Belleau Wood the defining battle of Marine history, made us into heroes. They teach it at the academy now. Young Marines learn about the devil dogs who wouldn't retreat, about the heroic stand that stopped the Germans. They don't teach about the bodies, about the smell, about the boys who came home broken, about Tommy hanging himself because he couldn't get out of the woods. They don't teach the truth because the truth doesn't make good Marines. The truth makes men who question, who hesitate, who understand what war really costs. I've been asked to speak at the Marine Corps birthday celebration, asked to share my experiences with young Marines, tell them what Belleau Wood was like. I always refuse. What would I tell them? That their dress blues are built on the bodies of boys who died screaming. That the eagle, globe, and anchor on their uniforms represent something that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. They don't want to hear that. Nobody does. I went back once, to France, to Belleau Wood. It was 1958, 40 years after the battle. There's an American cemetery there now. Rows and rows of white crosses, clean, neat, peaceful. I walked through those woods. They'd grown back mostly. The trees we'd shattered had been replaced. The shell craters had filled in. The undergrowth was thick again, just like it had been in 1918. But I could still see it. Could still see where the machine gun nests had been, where O'Donnell fell, where we'd fought for 26 days. The ghosts were still there, walking through the trees. I found a spot near where I thought our position had been, sat down on the ground, put my hand on the earth. I'm sorry, I said, to O'Donnell, to Frank, to David, to Tommy, to all of them. I'm sorry I survived when you didn't. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry for everything. The woods were quiet, just birds singing, wind in the trees, peaceful. But I could hear the machine guns, could hear the screaming, could hear O'Donnell shouting orders, could hear Tommy crying after he shot that German kid. The woods remembered. Even if nobody else did, the woods remembered. I left the next day. Couldn't stay, couldn't breathe in that place. It was supposed to be closure, supposed to help me move on. It didn't help. Nothing helps. 42 years and nothing helps. People ask me sometimes, younger people, people who didn't live through it. They ask what it was like, being in combat, being at Belleau Wood, being a Marine in the Great War. I tell them it was hell, but that's not enough. Hell is something you can imagine. Hell is in stories and paintings and songs. Belleau Wood was beyond imagination. It was standing in woods full of bodies while machine guns tore through the trees. It was watching your friends die while you couldn't help them. It was doing things that turned you into something you didn't recognize. It was surviving when better men died and living with the guilt of that for the rest of your life. It was being 20 years old and learning that humans are capable of industrialized slaughter on a scale that defies comprehension. That we can kill efficiently, mechanically, without mercy or hesitation. It was losing your humanity in those woods and spending the next 40 years trying to find it again. I never did find it, not all of it. Part of me is still there, still 20 years old, still surrounded by death and machine gun fire. The Marine Corps gave me medals. The French gave me medals. I have them in a box somewhere. Haven't looked at them in decades. Don't want to. They represent something I don't want to remember. I don't want to be honored for Belleau Wood. I don't want to be thanked for my service. I don't want parades or speeches or monuments. I just want people to understand, to really understand what war is, what it does to the men who fight it, what it costs. Not in terms of money or strategy or geopolitics, in terms of souls, in terms of humanity, in terms of boys who go into woods and never really come out. Tommy understood. He's the only one who really understood. And he couldn't live with it. I've lived with it for 42 years. Some days I don't know if that makes me stronger or just more stubborn. Some days I think Tommy made the right choice. But I'm still here, still carrying Belleau Wood, still hearing the machine guns, still seeing the bodies, still smelling that sweet, rotten smell of death in the June heat. Still in the woods. I'll die in those woods eventually. My body's here in Iowa, but my soul never left France, never left those trees where so many of us died. When I die, probably soon, my heart's not what it used to be. Maybe I'll finally get out of the woods. Maybe I'll finally find peace. Or maybe I'll just be another ghost walking through the trees forever, adding my voice to the screaming that never stops. Either way, I'm tired, so tired. 42 years of carrying this, 42 years of nightmares and guilt and ghosts. They call us the devil dogs. They call us heroes. They call Belleau Wood our finest hour. And they're wrong. Belleau Wood was the place where boys became ghosts. And we've been haunting the world ever since.